On a very tragic note, at least 2 more persons have the bomb attacks in Gwoza area of Borno State have lost their lives while receiving treatment at the State Specialist Hospital in Maiduguri. The acting governor of the state, Alhaji Umar Kadafur, made this known in an interview with reporters during a visit to the hospital on Sunday. Governor Babagana Zulum is currently in Pakistan on a business trip alongside his Borno and Adamawa state counterparts, Maimale Boni and Umaru Fintiri. Really tragic events in Borno State over the weekend. But of course, joining me on the show at this time is Salaudeen Hashim, as a programs director, CLEEN Foundation, joining from Nigeria, and also Shettima Mustapha, public affairs analyst, also joining from Borno State. Thank you, Nigeria. Thank you for joining me on the program, gentlemen.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, so let me start off with you, Salaudeen. A really tragic event over the weekend in Borno State. I mean, I think it's been a while, even though Nigeria, has been experiencing insecurity. But insecurity in this dimension, talking about suicide bombers, it's been a while since Nigeria would say it has experienced such, a dimension of attack. Are we looking at a situation of a resurgence?
Yeah, thank you very much. Of course, it is quite unfortunate, and to be very honest, I think the entire community is still grieving over the very sad incident that happened. One of the things that we have seen is actually recidivism. Recidivism is actually one of the very big emerging concerns that is actually confronting counterterrorism efforts in the entire Northeast. If you recall that lately there has been a number of surrender from the side of the terrorist organizations trying to find some kind of safe corridor through the entire situation that has occurred in that particular region. But unfortunately, we have seen a case of people who are then going back as a result of either additional failure of governance, which in the first place facilitated their recruitment, or that again we have seen a case where the concerns around this scorching socioeconomic situation has also increased this. The statistics from the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics for June and May says very clearly the level of inflation and how this has continued to then provide additional peeps into the potential attacks that we have seen. So it tells very clearly that the conversation, that security is actually interactive. The interaction between economy and security is actually very huge, and it is beginning to tell. The second point that I really want to put on the table is actually the concern around how we have weaponized gender. There is a massive gender weaponization, how small girls and women have become totally implicated in this kind of situation. And I think it should be publicly and generally and widely condemned because over 30 girls were actually deployed from Puka.
All right, it looks like we, of course, are trying to connect with Salaudeen. He was trying to actually sort of draw a comparison or draw a link between the economic situation and also insecurity in that region. He also talked about the weaponization of women and children. Unfortunately, this particular attack carried out by suicide bomber had women and children strapped with bombs, and had them go into populated places. It was, an open event, and then almost a follow-up. It seemed pretty much coordinated because it happened, or it was meant to happen at different locations. Some were nabbed in the process. And you would just look at this guerrilla style, kind of attack and ask yourself, are we really making progress in this fight against, terrorism, bandits, insurgents? Are we moving in circles? Or are they one step ahead? It's really, really sad. I mean, I saw videos of, the aftermath of this attack. I mean, these videos, too gory to even put on national television. That's to tell you the impact of it. Those that were casualties and victims of this attack, men were not spared, women were not spared, even children were not spared, in this particular carnage. And it's really very much unfortunate that we are back, or we are discussing this issue that we thought we've moved past and long forgotten. There are quite a number of hanging issues here to explore. Number one, why this method? Why this style? We know that at some point, in this terrorism fight, this used to be the modus operandi, and it seemed to simmer. So right now, I mean, why using humans as suicide bombers, to carry out this carnage? And also number two, why women and children? He made a point, weaponization of women and children. But again, there's also another point of, could it be that these terrorists are short of men? Because right now, the few of them that have not been killed, that maybe were forcefully grafted or joined them, are either repentant or they surrendered. So could it be that maybe they are short of the male folk? Hence, they're making use of the available, which of course is really very unfortunate. There are several hanging issues here to ask. And then why on this particular day at an event? And also the style, because from what we understand also, it was meant to happen at multiple points. But I understand that we have Salaudeen back. Salaudeen, before we, of course, pick up, let's go on a quick break, and, of course, we will continue. Stay with us. All right, we, of course, are having a bit of connectivity issues at the moment. But just to bring you up to speed on what actually did happen, it was just, a very random day, and then suicide bombers, or a suicide bomber, just walked into an event and detonated herself. And this happened concurrently to, at some other points. Now, at the end of the day, it was meant to be some sort of multiple attack, even though some were apprehended. But again, it raises a big question as to where the state of Nigeria's fight against terrorism, banditry, and also the fight on, as regards insecurity is going. Are we making progress? Like I mentioned earlier, suicide bombing, it seems like that technique, should we be apprehensive that maybe it's coming back? Because we know at some point that strategy, that technique was rested. And Borno State, which of course this unfortunate event did happen, has experienced relative peace in recent years. I mean, this was a state that was the hotbed of the activities of the Boko Haram. But in recent years, has experienced massive peace and progress. And so this raises quite a lot of questions as regards all of this. But I understand that Shettima is back. Shettima, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, great. Thank you for joining me on the conversation. I understand that you're in Borno State.
Thank you for having me.
Great. I understand that you're in Borno State at the moment.
Yes.
Great. So, I mean, briefly, before you, of course, tell us, we get deep into the matter. What is the situation of things in the state? And for you, what do you make of what has happened? Because for quite a number of people, we know that this style of attacks seem to have, been a thing of the past. Are we seeing a situation where this terrorist maybe are changing strategy this time around to engage suicide bombers?
The situation back here in Borno has been calm. The security agencies and emergency response agencies have already taken control of the situation. Victims have already been evacuated from Gwoza local government, where the multiple coordinated attacks happened, have been evacuated to Maiduguri General Hospital and Maiduguri Teaching Hospital, and at various stages of recuperation. Of course, as a result of the dastardly act, as clearly executed in Gwoza, so many casualties were recorded, including death. As of yesterday, the number of deaths was around 21. And normally in attacks of this nature, normally the number of deaths is normally expected to rise in the course of treatment of wounded patients. As you rightly pointed out, Maiduguri, Borno State generally, the Northeast as well, over a long period of time have enjoyed relative peace from the activities of Boko Haram and other terrorist organizations' attacks. And this is clearly an attempt by the degraded insurgents to actually register their presence as far as security situations in the country is concerned. Because over few years, a couple of years now, the attention of our security agencies have shifted from northeast to northwestern part of Nigeria, where banditry activities are taking place. So as a result of this relative peace that is being enjoyed, there is some level of laxity on the part of communal vigilance and probably on the part of the securities. And this explains why this coordinated attack in Gwoza happened, because our security, our agencies, and then our community members have been taken unaware because of the relative peace that is being enjoyed all across the state. So I think more or less the insurgents or the terrorists, as properly called, are making an attempt to actually show off their presence within the northeastern part of Nigeria, or Borno in particular. But this is, however, could be a futile effort, provided our community's level of vigilance have been heightened, and then our security agencies are further mobilized to actually beat off vigilance to ensure that those unfortunate attacks.
Shettima, I'm sorry to interrupt you, slightly, but let's look at the nature of this particular attack. It seemed almost very coordinated. We know that, from the feelers we have and the information that we've been able to get, women and children were used, as bombers or casualty in this suicide, bombing. And it was meant to happen at multiple points. What does this reflect and what does this tell us?
This is the clear signature of the modus operandi or the way of the operation of the terrorist group in Borno State, in the Northeast as a whole. This has always been strategies of their attack, particularly on sub-targets in communities. And this is what the terrorist organization or the group, as they may be called, are trying to actually use this particular attack to actually tell the Nigerian state is that they are still there and they are still very much alive, and they can be able to launch coordinated attacks on particularly sub-targets. So it will be a proper propagandist strategy on their part to actually let the world and the Nigerian state know that they are very much around in Borno, and that they can be able to launch coordinated attack on communities. And Nigerian government and the security should also not take it lightly, because as from the feelings we've been getting, there is some reports, even though it's not confirmed from the security authorities in the state, that multiple suicide bombers, potential suicide bombers, were actually sent to various communities, particularly in Gwoza local government, where those horrendous attacks took place. So we are not sure whether there are some potential bombers, suicide bombers still around, so that our communities and security agencies are expected to work in synergy as they used to do during the peak of that insurgency to ensure that those spaces are actually blocked so that those insurgents will not be able to get the leeway to be able to launch this kind of orchestrated attacks.
I mean, talking about what security agencies can do, I'm sorry to also cut in again, but let's look at the nature of suicide bombing, for instance. It's mostly guerrilla warfare style, where individuals just mix with civilians and then walk into crowded spaces and blow up themselves. You know, even as a security personnel, this might be difficult to profile. I mean, looking at a crowd of people, it's almost difficult to tell who's the threat from who, of course, is peaceful or harmless. So what do you think can be done to immediately, you know, sort of control this? Because like I said earlier, Borno State, which was a hotbed before, in recent times has enjoyed relative peace and progress. What can be done to sort of attack this issue from the root cause, you know, to further prevent issues like this from escalating?
Yes, one important thing that needs to be done in order to contain the attempt by the insurgent to research is for the security outfit within this area to actually review its strategy and architecture. Because perhaps because of the relative peace, as you rightly pointed out, that has been enjoyed for a very considerable period of time, a lot of surveillances perhaps and approaches have been relaxed. So there is need on the part of our security agencies to further review the security approach to the situation. And then secondly, our communities in those days, during the peak of the insurgencies, most particularly the communities were able to put in place strategy to be able to garner local intelligence that has gone a long way in helping security agencies to be able to be effective in their response to situations like this. So it is high time that the securities and our local intelligence and local militia group to be able to come together and strategize new ways and approaches with a view of actually confronting the new emerging situation so that it doesn't spiral and goes out of hand. Because if nothing new, if approaches are not changed, if the strategies are not renewed, and the level of intelligence and security alertness of various communities is not heightened again, there is every tendency the new resurgence, the attempt to research by the terrorist organization will actually roll back whatever successes the security agencies and the government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria was able to achieve over that long period of time. So it is high time our security agencies need to review the situation on the ground, need to actually activate all local militia groups if they have gone back to a state of relaxation, to be able to move them up, activate them, and then come up with new ideas, new strategy, and new approach, so that this
talking about strategy, Shettima, talking about strategy now. There's also the issue of repentant terrorists, where some of them, are forgiven and given some sort of slap on the wrist to go and sin no more. That it wasn't their fault; they were forcefully grafted in, and they surrendered, and that they are now back to society. Do you also think that should be looked into to be sure that truly many of these individuals, have not renegated?
Of course, as part of the repentance program, we were allowed to understand that most of these repentant Boko Haram members were actually deployed in many fronts to help our security agencies and local militia groups in the fight against the insurgency in the Northeast. And from pocket of reports we've been getting from our local community members, it is clear that it has worked at so many fronts. So I think we also would like to use this particular platform to call on our security agencies to actually use those repentants as part of the new approach to ensure that their experiences, their knowledge of the terrain, their knowledge of the modus operandi of the group, to tap into their knowledge and experience of the modus operandi of that group, so that the security can now come up with new strategies, with a new ways, with a new approach in containing this attempt. Because it is an attempt, it could be a futile attempt, because so far, as we rightly pointed out in the course of the program, that Borno and the Northeast have experienced relative peace, because of the capability of our security outfit and security agencies to be able to substantially degrade the capability of the insurgents to launch coordinated attack across the region. So I think the security agencies should not rest on their oars to consider this as an isolated attempt on the part of the security, on the part of the insurgents to actually attack sub-targets. No, it will be an attempt to announce they are coming back to the stage in order to continue with their dastard and inhuman operation against the northeastern, against the northeast as a whole and Borno in particular.
All right.
So the security agency should not take this lightly, so that they should pop off
Shettima, sorry to interject here. Sorry to interrupt you. Let's also look at the role of community in all of this, because at the end of the day, God forbid, should attacks like this happen, the biggest casualty there is the immediate community, in which such attacks take place. Yes. What role can, community members, play in all of this?
One of the most important role our communities can play, because as you rightly pointed out, they are the first point of attack whenever such attacks are carried out. The first important role such communities can play is to reactivate their community intelligence capability, and then to heighten the level of alertness of the community members. In those days, during the peak of the insurgencies, all communities across all local governments in Borno State were to come up with their own local strategies, local approach in order to contain those. And in most cases, those approaches, those strategies have effectively worked in actually containing those insurgents, in actually curtailing the capability of those insurgents to have free space to operate in those communities. So I will fall back on the leaders of those communities, particularly the local vigilantes in those communities, and then the civilian joint task force in those communities, to be able to come together, mobilize resources and mobilize personnel to ensure that those intelligence, those local intelligence that they used to have, need to be reactivated, need to be heightened, to ensure that local community members will not take this particular relative peace that is being enjoyed for granted. Because those insurgents are just looking around those communities, because most of the communities are forest in nature. So if those local community intelligence capability are not reactivated again and then heightened, and the level of alertness of our community is not heightened, those insurgents are just looking around, and they can be able to launch attack at any point in time, particularly on sub-target, because their capability to organize and launch coordinated attack on military formation have been greatly reduced over the years. And that explains why the communities and Borno as a whole was able to enjoy relative peace for some years now. So I think the communities, more than the security agencies, have a greater role to play. The religious leaders, the traditional rulers, the leaders of thought in various communities.
Shettima, I'm sorry to interrupt you again. I'm sorry. We're pressed for time. But your points are duly, of course, noted. But my final question to you, and I would appreciate it if you can respond in less than 60 seconds. There has been calls by public officers and even some influential Nigerians that Nigerians should be allowed to carry arms, to own weapons, to own guns precisely. What's your take on it?
My take on that is that allowing Nigerians to carry arms anyhow will going to further put this nation at a precarious situation. The most important thing is to further empower our security agencies in order to collaborate with our local communities to be able to engage security situation across all fronts in the country. I really don't support the call in some parts of this country to allow Nigerians to bear arms in order to defend themselves. However, the security situation has seriously deteriorated, which actually explains why the call from such quarters are coming up. However, I would rather call on government to further empower our security agencies to be able to contain the security situation in the country, rather than allowing Nigerians to take weapons in order to defend themselves.
All right. Thank you so much for your contribution on the program today. Deeply appreciated. Shettima Mustapha, Public Affairs Analyst from Borno State. Once again, thank you for your time, and please stay safe.